صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة ويا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الكريم وقوله الحق وهو أصدق الصادقين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. So when you're gathering with a remembrance upon Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our a'mal, our siyam, our dua in the holy month of Ramadan, recite the second salawat. As a gift to the soul of all the departed mu'mineen and mu'minat, and to hasten the reappearance of Sayyidina wa Mawlana Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, recite the third salawat with the loudest of your voices. ومن كلام لسيدنا ومولانا أمير المؤمنين أنه قال فهو الصديق الذي لا يكذب والهادي الذي لا يضل ما جالسه أحد إلا وقام عنه بزيادة ونقصان زيادة في هدى ونقصان في عمى. And a beautiful sermon and a prolonged sermon. Amir al-Mu'mineen begins to describe the Holy Quran. And of course, in many of his sermons, Amir al-Mu'mineen sometimes would just take a little drift, take a little moment, and he there would stop and describe the Quran. Speak of the qualities of the Quran, the characteristics of the Quran. And indeed, when Amir al-Mu'mineen describes the Quran, it's as if the Quran is describing itself. For no one understood the Quran after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam that walked on the surface of this earth like Ali ibn Abi Talib. And look how beautiful he states. We'll speak of some of the segments of this beautiful sermon. He says, first and foremost, the Quran is a friend that never lies. Never lies. We all have friends. And most of our friends, they don't lie. But do they never lie? Believe me, almost every friend that you have, when it's necessary, it sometimes happens. But this friend, if you were to befriend the Quran, this friend never lies. Then he says, وَهُوَ الْهَادِيُ الَّذِي لَا يَضِلُّ. And the Quran is an advisor. You can seek advice from the Quran. In every aspect of your life, in every moment of your life, you can seek advice from the Quran. A lot of people, they say, Sayyid, we read the Quran, okay? But the Quran, when we read it, it speaks to people that lived 1,400 years ago. And we live differently today, so I find that I don't connect with the Quran. What the Quran is telling me, I don't understand. I cannot apply it to my life. It's not applicable to me. The answer to that is that, brother, sister, my friend, my beloved, the problem there isn't with the Quran. The problem is with my limited understanding of the Quran. The problem there is I'm not understanding. I'm not being able to comprehend the Quran. The problem and the issue there isn't with the Quran. Rasulullah, when he departed this life, and when he left this Muslim ummah, what did he say? I am leaving amongst you two weighty things. Kitab Allah wa itrati, the Quran and the Ahl al-Bayt. He didn't say, and they shall continue for another 50 years, 60 years, 100 years. He said, those two that I am leaving amongst you, the inheritance that I leave behind for my entire ummah until the day of judgment, number one is the Quran. So today I should be able to read the Quran, understand the Quran, and apply the Quran into my life. Every moment of the day the Quran has solutions, guidelines. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, وَهُوَ الْهَادِي. It is an advisor. It gives you advice. But what type of advice? وَهُوَ الْهَادِيُ الَّذِي لَا يَضِلُّ. This advisor never gives you the wrong advice. It's like a GPS that will always take you home safely. Even that GPS and the most expensive vehicles, right? Sometimes there is a roadblock. Sometimes it does not calculate traffic. Sometimes it takes you from a longer distance. But this advisor will always take you safely home to your destination. Allows you to reach your goals. وَهُوَ الْهَادِيُ الَّذِي لَا يَضِلُّ. Then Amir al-Mu'mineen continues until he says this. Whoever spends time with the Quran, sits with the Quran, we all then would depart with an increase and a decrease. An increase in wisdom. An increase in enlightenment. An increase in awareness. An increase in knowledge. And a decrease. So you get up with an increase and a decrease. A decrease in what? A decrease in blindness. A decrease in confusion. A decrease in darkness. Ignorance. Allah does not want confused and ignorant believers. Mu'mineen. A mu'min that's confused all the time. Brother, what are you doing? I don't know, I'm confused. Sister, why are you doing this? I'm confused. This is not what Allah wants. Allah doesn't want us to just spend our life not knowing what we're doing. Allah وَلِيُّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا يُخْرِجَهُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إلى النور. What is nur? Allah wants to take us out from ظلمات, darkness, ignorance, confusion, unawareness, into light, into certainty, into knowledge. Therefore, we ought to spend time with the Quran. And when we gather in such nights, the nights of the month of Ramadan, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن, then هدى للناس, a mean of guidance. To whom? To the believers? To the Muslims? للناس, all people. هدى للناس. So this huda should be the central theme of our majalis, of our gatherings. We shouldn't sit there and talk about dreams and stories, and sometimes some majalis turn into stand-up comedy, sometimes no, it's the opposite. You hear a majlis, you're feeling okay. You're not sad and depressed at the moment. But you go to the majlis, you come out, you wonder, is it okay for me to commit suicide now or no? The central theme of a majlis should be the Quran. Because when I start speaking of my own things, sometimes it could be stand-up comedy, sometimes it could be depressing, sometimes it's just people wasting their time. But when I use the Quran as the central theme of my discussion, then the Quran turns into a mean of huda. Huda linnas. And once we take the Quran and we bring the Quran into our lives, brothers and sisters, the Quran will elevate us. It's like you're floating on air. You'll be much higher than this life that we're stuck with, dealing with every day. Many of you have probably heard of the story of Bishr, also known as Bishr al-Hafi. Ahsant. Who was Bishr al-Hafi? What happened that Bishr became Bishr al-Hafi? Bishr was a young man, a handsome, good-looking man, who was also wealthy. And he had turned his home into a nightclub. So every night there would be drinking, there would be alcohol, there would be music, celebrations. And then there would be a set of women that come and belly dancing at Bishr's home. This was the habit of Bishr, everybody knew. One day, Bishr, he left his home. This young man. Many of us, sometimes we think, I have sinned so much. I've done so much bad. What do I have to do with the Quran now? What's the Quran going to do for me? So Bishr, he came out of his home one day and he saw a piece of paper on the ground. He looked at the piece of paper out of curiosity, and he realized it's a ripped piece of the Quran. So out of respect, he kneeled. He picked up the piece of paper. He cleaned it. He wiped it, he cleaned it, he kissed it. He purified it. And then he had some atar, some perfume in his pocket, so he took it out and he put it on the piece of paper. And then he raised it and he put it inside a wall. He walked away, went back to his life. The Quran then spoke to Bishr. Not with words that you would hear with your own ears, but words where you can comprehend and feel with your spirit, with your heart, with your soul. What did the Quran say to him? The Quran says, Ya Bishr, O Bishr, you cleansed me, I will cleanse you. You purified me, I will purify you. You protected me, I will protect you. You elevated me, you raised me, I will raise you. Allahu Akbar. Today our community, our youth, our elders, the reason why sometimes we feel that we are not powerful, we are weak, we are behind, we are not successful, we're not happy. Amir al-Mu'mineen, a person came to him, he said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I'm depressed. He says, how can you be depressed and you have the Quran? only and you have the Quran. But you know, sometimes, some people, they don't enjoy the Quran. They don't enjoy the Quran. They enjoy everything else besides the Quran. The Quran to them is dry. It's boring. When we give respect to the Quran, then we begin a relationship with the Quran. And the Quran then will have its powerful effect on our existence. And this is the meaning of the ayah that I began my lecture with in Surah Al-Hashr. Allah says, not just you, the human, who has a heart, a soul. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل. If we were to descend this Quran on a mountain, لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. You'll find that even this mountain cannot carry the weight of the Quran. Even a mountain cannot carry the weight of it. This is the effect that the Quran will have, even on a rock, let alone a heart of a human being. So once we start a relationship with the Quran, this is what happens. But if we start a negative relationship with the Quran, we disrespect the Quran, we mock the Quran, we create a distance between us and the Quran. What do I mean? The only time we see a Quran is when somebody is dead, deceased. So we go and we sit in the majlis, and people, they have, the Quran, reciting the Quran, and we hear the Quran, maybe we'll read some Surah Al-Hamd or something, and that's it. Or when we're traveling, your mother comes and holds the Quran, kiss the Quran, walk underneath the Quran, this is it. Or at the wedding, when they have the wedding ceremony, they open the Quran in front of them, and the Arus Khanum is sitting there waiting. Yes? For her to say yes. This is the only time we see the Quran. Other than that, we don't have a relationship with the Quran. If that happens, then we don't feel the sweetness of the Quran. One of the great scholars of our time writes in his book, he says, I knew a young man who always was reading the Quran, enjoying the Quran. And every majlis, he was there to begin the majlis with the recitation of the Quran. So that people, when they heard his voice, they felt the beauty of the Quran. Allahu Akbar. And this is not the right time for me to tell you of the tremendous thawab that a person would gain and get if they were the one that's reading the Quran for a public. And the people get drawn to the Quran because of him, his voice, what he's doing, what he's offering. The Quran will be the shafi', the interceder of such a person in the Day of Judgment. Anyhow, so there was a person that always had the Quran with him, reading the Quran, loving the Quran. He said until this person went to Hajj. And then he came back. We told him, Fulan, can you read Quran? No, please. And when the Quran was being recited, he would leave. When he heard the Quran, please turn off the radio, I can't listen. He says, one day I went to this man, I said, man, what happened to you? You went to Hajj instead of becoming more religious, more in tuned, more in love with the Quran. Now you don't even read the Quran. You don't like listening to the Quran. What happened to you? He says, Sayyidina Wallah, I know what happened to me. He says, what happened to you? He says, I was in my building in Mecca, and my Quran was in my pocket, and I was waiting to enter Masjid al-Haram so that I would read the Quran. When I came out, I saw a man selling books. He was selling books. So I said, I picked up a book, and it was a book of poetry, romantic poetry. So I read it and I really liked it. I read another page. I loved it. So he said, I want to buy this book. He said, do you know the seller? He says, do you know who this book belongs to, the poetry? He says, no, I don't. He said, read the cover. So he said, I flipped the cover and it was the poems of Yazid ibn Muawiyah. So I said, you know what, I'm just reading poems, so it's not a big deal. I'll just buy the book. He said, okay, this is how much it costs. So he said, I put my hand in my pocket to take out money. I didn't have money. So he said, let me go back to the building and get my money, and then I'll pay for the book. He said, you know what, I don't have a book, I don't have a Quran. So why don't you put the Quran and take the book of poetry? So this man, he said, you know, I have many Qurans. He said, I left the Quran and I took the books of poetry. He said, from that moment, I look at the Quran and it's as if the Quran is telling me, don't carry me. Don't read me. I will never let you enjoy me. What this man did was extremely disrespectful, right? Right? Who would do something like that? Would you do something like that? Huh? Would anybody here do something like that? But I think some of us do. When we choose the lyrics of music that's probably worse than the poems of Yazid over the Quran, whether it's our home, whether it's on TV, whether it's on our iPad, whether it's on our iPhone, whether it's in the car, we're exactly doing what this man had done. And I don't expect the Quran to have that sweetness when you want to read it, when you want to enjoy it, when you want to listen to it. True? Let us change our relationship with the Quran. Let us change the way we deal with the Quran so that the Quran can turn you into another Bishr. What happened to Bishr? The Quran says to Bishr, I will elevate you. I will protect you. I will purify you. I will cleanse you. The same evening, Bishr went back home. The ladies came. The alcohol came, the musicians came, the party began. Moments later, a slave girl in the house of Bishr, she went to open the door for someone who was knocking at the door. In that very same moment, Allah had dispatched His Khalifa, His Imam, Al-Ma'soom, Musa ibn Ja'far, to the street of Bishr. Says Musa ibn Ja'far, go to the house of Bishr. Allahu Akbar. The Imam was passing, he saw the slave girl. The Imam says to her, who does this home belong to? She says, it belongs to Bishr. He says, this Bishr, is he a free man or is he a slave? So she laughed and she said, do you really think he could be a slave and live such a life? Obviously he's a free man. So the Imam said, that's what I thought. And he left. Now, sometimes we hear a lot of words of hadiths from the Ahlul Bayt. It doesn't have an effect. But Allah has now prepared this heart. Allah has prepared this soul. The Quran has done shafa'ah for this person. So she goes in, Bishr says, what happened? Who were you speaking to? She says, I don't know. I saw a man who asked me if you're a slave or a free man. And I said, of course you're not a slave, you're a free man. Bishr understood what the Imam meant. That is, he a slave to Allah. Ilahi, kafali azzan an akuna laka abda. Oh Allah, it is the greatest honor for me to be enslaved by you, to be your slave. It is the biggest honor for us to be entitled Abdullah. In our salah, what do we say? Ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. It's not something simple to be Abdullah. So Bishr, he ran out. He held the man. He said, what is your name? He says, my name is Musa. Musa the son of whom? Musa the son of Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq. He says, I want to stay with you. The Imam says, but you're barefoot. Go wear your shoes. He says, no, I'm never going back home. And there the Imam called him Bishr al-Hafi. Bishr the barefoot. He became one of the disciples of Musa ibn Ja'far. This is what the Quran can do to us. Can do to our souls, to our communities. And many of us, in the month of Ramadan, we keep reading the Quran. Sometimes we hear lectures about the Quran, we spend time with the Quran, but we have not heard or understood or read or studied the very basic principles of understanding the Quran. Today, if you want to study anything, psychology, you study introduction to psychology, then you study psychology. You want to study law, you go and you study pre-law, alaykum as-salam, then you study law. Similarly, you want to study medicine, you go and you study biology first, chemistry. Every law, every knowledge, every science has an introduction, prerequisites, a one-on-one that gives you the tools. It's like anything else that you do. You want to go play football, you have to learn the laws. You don't just say, well, give me a ball, I'll know the way. You have to know the rules. You want to play basketball, the same thing. It has rules. Understanding the Quran, comprehending the Quran, it also has rules. Sometimes some people, they live 10 years, 20 years, 50 years reading the tafsir of the Quran, hearing the tafsir of the Quran, reading the Quran, but they have no clue what they're doing. That's the difference between an alim and a jahil. Why is the thawab of alim always bigger, always greater, always thousands of folds more? Because he knows what he's reading. He knows what he's doing. Don't just sit there and say that's not fair. You also can become an alim. You can also learn the way. You can also multiply your thawab. But you have to take the right steps. You have to understand, how is it that I engage now with the Quran? And that is why this evening I will spend the remaining of this discussion speaking of the different methodologies of tafsir. Before you hear a lecture of tafsir and you go and read tafsir, understand the methodology of tafsir. What is tafsir? How many different types of tafsir do we have? Why is it important that when I try to study the Quran, I keep all those types, all those methodologies, all those formulas in mind? Why? Let us bless this gathering with a remembrance upon Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable every single one of us to have the most beautiful of relationships with the Holy Quran. Again, ببركة الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. The first methodology of tafsir, or the type of tafsir that you will come across, whether it's listening to a lecture or reading a book of tafsir, is the methodology of tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran. To do the tafsir of the Quran using the Quran itself. The second form, the second type of tafsir is tafsir al-Quran bil-Ma'thur. Tafsir al-Quran using hadith and the riwayat of the Ma'sumin. Third type of tafsir is tafsir al-Quran bil-Tarikh. Tafsir of the Quran using history. Fourth type of tafsir is tafsir al-Quran bil-Mantuq wal-Mafhum. Tafsir of the Quran using the explicit and the implicit verses. Fifth type of tafsir is tafsir al-Quran bil-Aql. To do the tafsir of the Quran using logic. Now, before I begin to engage, a person who wants to truly understand the Quran has to be able to comprehend the Quran through all those 5 avenues. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but all 5 of them. That is why sometimes when you read a tafsir, and it is only the type of tafsir that uses the Quran to explain the Quran, you find it not as powerful, not as meaningful. It doesn't do justice to the Quran. Or it's only a tafsir that uses hadith, nothing else. Or it's only a tafsir that uses history. Of course, we have scholars who are experts in Quran and history. So this is the type of book they write. But you as a student should not only depend on this tafsir. Go read it, then come back and say, Sayyidina, what is this? Tell you, well, this is one type of tafsir, one formula of tafsir. There are 4 more that you're neglecting, you've forgotten. And mashallah, today, alhamdulillah, we have self-declared scholars, self-declared mufassirin. And they sit on the minbar and they say whatever they like. And of course there is a group of people that follow them. They listen to them, they cheer for them. Not knowing that this person has not understood the formula of tafsir al-Quran. Tafsir is not about just reading one book or a chapter from a book and then coming and saying whatever we say. It's an art. The Quran is complicated. The Quran is not a book that we read just like a newspaper or a magazine. The Quran is supposed to stimulate our minds. The Quran pulls you to discover, to learn, to investigate. So let us examine those 5 types and methodologies of tafsir, and why is it that every one of them is as important as the one that comes after them or prior to them. وصلوا على محمد وآل محمد. The first type of tafsir is tafsir al-Qur'an bil-Qur'an, to use the Quran to understand the Quran itself. Sometimes we come across one verse from the Quran and we say, look, this is in the Quran. And we try to use that verse to our advantage. Or we try to use that verse to explain something that's outside the religion of Islam. For example, I give a loan to somebody. To my brother who is Muslim, to my sister who is Muslim. They're trying to build a home, buy a car, get married, whatever it may be. Start a business. So I give this brother 10,000 euros. Right? I'm not going to give you 10,000 euros. This is just an example. And then he tells me, well, Sayyidina, when should I give this back? I tell him next year. So next year he comes and he gives me back the 10,000 euros. I said, what do you think you're doing? 10,000 euros, I gave it to you last year. You're giving me back 10,000 euros now? He says, what should I do? I said, give me interest. How much interest? 20%, let's say. So I take 20%. Is this halal or haram? Brother who's taking 20% interest or giving 20% interest, they say, no, it's halal. Why is it halal? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran says that when you do transactions between 2 parties, both parties should be in agreement. لا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل إلا أن تكون تجارة عن تراض بينكم. Allah says, if both parties are in agreement, they're content, then there is no problem. And you tell him, brother, why are you taking interest? He says, because it's in the Quran. This guy, he doesn't mind giving me 20%. Brother, do you mind? No, I don't mind. So what is wrong with this formula? It's only taking one verse from the Quran. Not looking at the other verse that says, أَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. Such a transaction is called riba, and it's haram in the Quran. So we don't just take one ayah and we say this is what sets the law. In regards to one law, we may have to take a look at 20 verses, 30 verses, 50 verses in the Quran, so that we can draw a conclusion, so that we can have a real understanding of the Quranic perspective in regards to this particular issue. Allah in another ayah, this is in regards to Islamic law. Now Islamic belief, I'll give you an example from the Quran. Allah says, الَّذِينَ يُبَايِعُونَكَ تَحْتَ الشَّجَرَةِ إِنَّمَا يُبَايِعُونَ اللَّهِ يَدُ اللَّهِ. Who said that? يَدُ اللَّهِ فَوْقَ أَيْدِيهِمْ. صَلُّوا عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَآلِ مُحَمَّدٍ. This is the type of people we need in our lectures, who know the Quran, who are familiar with the Quran. Every one of you. The reason why I stop is because you're being tested. How much do you know of the Quran? And the same thing will happen when they put you in your grave in the day of judgment. How much do you know of the Quran? Allah says, and His hand is above all hands. Allah's hand is above all hands. So Allah, does He have a hand? Does Allah have a hand? But the Quran says He has a hand. Why are you changing the Quran? The Quran in another ayah explains what hand means. We cannot just take one ayah, but we go to another ayah and Allah says, لا تدركه الأبصار. He's not seen by the physical eyes because He does not have a physical existence or a mass. He's beyond the existence that we understand, the metaphorical, the physical existence that occupies a space or location and is confined by time. Allah in another verse explains this. The second type of tafsir is tafsir al-Quran using hadith. And you can never understand the Quran fully without hadith. وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ. One of the most famous verse, oftenly repeated verse in the Quran in different ways, and establish salah and pay zakat. Okay, I want to use this verse without hadith and apply this verse. How many rak'ah salat al-dhuhr? Use the Quran to tell me. How many rak'ah salat al-asr? Use the Quran to tell me. How many rak'ah salat al-subuh? Use the Quran to tell me. I have 100 sheep. How much zakat should I pay for those sheep? Use the Quran to tell me. I have, for example, 10 acres of cotton. How much zakat should I pay? Use the Quran to tell me. It's not possible. You need the hadith to come and tell you. So the hadith is the mufassir of the Quran. One day, one of the Khalafa of Bani al-Abbas, he was sitting down and they brought a thief. So he says, I want to amputate the hand of the thief. And he asked the scholars, where should we amputate? Allah says amputate the hand of the thief in the Quran. Where should we amputate the hands of the thief? So one person says from here. One person says from the elbow. One person says from here. Imam al-Jawad was 9 years old, present in that majlis. So Al-Ma'mun al-Abbasi looked at him and he says to him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, what do you think? They laughed. They said, you're asking a 9-year-old child what he thinks? The Imam says, you only take 4 fingers. So he says, but Allah says, amputate the hand. 4 fingers aren't the hand. How can you say that, Ya ibn Rasulullah? The Imam, without his hadith, we would never know. Because we need this is how we prove the Imam of our Imams. How? That they are in need, everyone needed them while they needed nobody. It's never that history says one of our Imams, even if he was 9 years old, went and asked someone for help. Or he didn't understand something and someone taught him. Or they had a teacher, even when he was 5 years old. The ilm, they were born with. The knowledge, they were born with. The wisdom, they were born with. It's like Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus, peace be upon him, when he was born, his mother pointed at him and he spoke. قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا. The Imam is the same thing. So the Imam, they told him, why 4 fingers? He says, because Allah in the Quran says, إِنَّ الْمَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا. The places where we used to do sajda belong to Allah and we cannot take them away. And the palm of the hand is one of the masajid. This is how we understand the Quran, through the hadith. We want to pay zakat. Who tells us how to pay zakat? The hadith. Are those two enough? The Quran to explain itself and the hadith. It's enough. But do we want the full meaning of the Quran? A full perspective, a 360? We need history. Why? Because Allah and the Quran, the hadith, they speak of, for example, the Battle of Badr and the second year after the Hijrah, the Battle of Uhud and the third year of the Hijrah. But does the Quran or the hadith tell you that, for example, in the Battle of Uhud, 70 people were killed from the mushrikeen. 35 of them were killed by the sword of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. History tells you. Only with history, when you read those ayat that speak of the battle of Badr, is when you understand Allahu Akbar. Who was Ali ibn Abi Talib? And what did he do for Islam? And the battle of Uhud, Allah speaks of Uhud. But history tells us how Hamza was killed. It tells us who killed him. It tells us after he was killed what happened to Hamza, Sayyid al-Shuhada. And it also speaks again of the remarkable bravery of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Single-handedly won the war. Until Jibreel comes and he says, La fata illa Ali. La sayf illa dil fiqar. This is what history tells us. Some ignorant people use their hadiths and they say Abu Talib, he died as mushrik. Abu Talib, he died as mushrik. How do we prove that Abu Talib? History. There was something in the 7th year after the Ba'athah, the Mab'ath of Rasulullah, called Sha'b Abu Talib, the camp of Abu Talib. What was the camp of Abu Talib? All the Muslims went into a territory, into a camp called the camp of Abu Talib, where Abu Talib fed them, Abu Talib protected them, Abu Talib gave them asylum, and no one was able to harass them. The Muslims took refuge to Abu Talib in Sha'b Abu Talib. Now would a mushrik do something like that? Or a mushrik would just tell his nephew, I raised you, I took care of you, what is this things that you're saying? You're causing me so many problems. Stop this. Or a mu'min, a believer, that's willing to give everything that he has and to face Quraysh. Won't be a mu'min. And not just normal iman. A mu'min that gave his son, Ali, he says, go and protect Rasulullah with your life. History explains to us. So when they read me this ayah or that ayah, or this ayah says Abu Talib was mushrik, this is, you tell them, the Quran isn't just a book where we understand it through other ayat or hadith, but history also plays a role. Another type of tafsir is using the explicit verses to seek the implicit in the verses. What do I mean? Al-mantuqi wal-mafhum. Sometimes I say, it's hot in here. I explicitly state, it's hot in this room. What am I implying? What am I implying? Huh? Huh?
Air conditioning.
Exactly. Brother, thank you. I know everybody is hungry and tired, but this is a simple question. To that extent, you can answer me. I am saying, for example, I am hungry. Explicitly state I am hungry. What am I implying? Huh? Bring me food. I want food. Allah in the Quran, in some ayat, He says something explicitly, and many things are also implied. For example, in one ayah, Allah says, وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. When you speak to your parents, when you deal with your parents, do not tell them off. And do not speak unkindly to them. This is stated explicitly in the Quran. What is being implied? What is being implied is obviously you can't beat them. Obviously you can't shout. Obviously you cannot do anything else that is entitled as disrespectful. Because this is what the Quran is trying to imply. Sometimes we read the Quran, we read explicit verses, but we don't use our brain to find that which is being implied by the Quran. We just walk right through it. That's why I said the Quran is a book that's meant to stimulate our minds. When you read an ayah, think about it. Ponder. See what type of message does this ayah carry? What is it trying to tell me? How do I relate it to my life today? Yes, if I read it, I'm not going to get anything out of it. But when I read it word by word, I contemplate. I then ask, why was this ayah revealed? When was it revealed? What is the hadith explaining it? What is the history surrounding it? Is it implying something? I seek more benefits from the Quran, and there I create a better relationship with me and the Quran. True? Last form and methodology of tafsir is having to use our aql when we read the Quran. Sometimes some people, they think when they deal with religion, when they deal with Islam, when they come to the masjid, then they should turn off the aql. That's it. Hear anything I hear, khalas. This must be true, it must be right, it must be correct, I must believe it, I must do it. And I just don't ever depend on my brain or my aql or my intellect anymore. Is this right or wrong? It's wrong. Sometimes when you read the Quran, you also should use your aql. I'm not saying use your aql and make up your own theories. Use your aql, ask, investigate, read, question. You'll get to a better state. You'll arrive to your destination. You will reach your goal. I'll conclude with this story. Abu Hanifa, who is the Imam of the Hanafi school of thought, and we have many, many millions of Muslims who are Hanafi around the world. Abu Hanifa, he would state, his fatwa was, that Allah cannot punish shaitan in the day of judgment. There's no way for the shaitan to be punished. That's why the shaitan, he does whatever he does, because he knows he can't get punished. Because he's not scared. Why? Because Allah says to the shaitan, why didn't you do sujood when I ordained you and I ordered you to do sujood to Adam? ما منعك أن تسجد إذ أمرتك؟ قال أنا خير منه. I am better than Adam. Shaitan says, I am better than Adam. خلقته من تراب وخلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. He created me from fire and He created him from clay. So Allah on the day of judgment, He takes shaitan, who's made from fire, and He throws him in fire. What type of punishment is that? So Abu Hanifa, he should have been there to advise Allah not to create shaitan with fire. Now that he has, he should create something else besides Jahannam. And he would say this. He would say, Allah will not be able to punish shaitan on the day of judgment. One day Buhlul, he sat outside the classroom of Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa, he came out of the class. The students were surrounding him. Saying goodbyes to Abu Hanifa, suddenly Buhlul threw a huge brick on the top of his head. And it broke Abu Hanifa's head and there was blood everywhere. So they took Buhlul, they took him to the judge. Abu Hanifa came, Buhlul came, there was a judge. And Abu Hanifa was bleeding. So the judge said, Buhlul, why would you hit him with a piece of clay? Huge, you broke his head. This is Abu Hanifa, a scholar. So I was only applying what he believes in. He thinks and he believes that Allah cannot punish fire with fire. He's made of clay. I hit him with clay. I didn't think it was going to break his head. Sometimes when we read the Quran, we should also use our brain. Not that we shut our brain.